Hey everyone, so it's gotten really cold here in New Jersey, and after checking the long-range weather forecast, it is not going to warm up anytime soon. So I normally store the cars from about December to April. I did it a few weeks early just because it's gotten so cold. I'm pretty much below the recommended 45 degrees Ford recommends for driving Cup 2s, and I don't have to worry about trying to clean the cars when it's really cold outside. So I just did them early on the last nice warm day of the year. And today I want to go over what I do to get the cars ready for seasonal storage. I want to talk about what I do to keep the conditions right in here, as well as some other considerations that might work for other people, but I personally do not do. So, the process that I do for getting the cars ready for storage. First thing I do is try to run the cars as low as possible on fuel. I take them to the gas station. I fill the cars up with premium fuel. I put fuel stabilizer in the gas tank while the cars are at the gas station, so on the drive home it gets nice and churned up and mixed into the entire fuel system. The cars get a very thorough washing and cleaning. A new coating of spray-on ceramic will go onto the cars. They get vacuumed. I add additional air to the tires. The battery tenders get hooked up. The disposable covers go on, and then finally, I change some of the conditions for my insurance policy. And I want to go over all of these in a little bit more detail. First thing, storing the cars with fuel. There's two main schools of thought. This is a pretty hotly debated topic. Do you store the cars with a full tank of fuel or an empty tank of fuel? One thought is storing with a full tank of fuel means there's no airspace inside the tank and moisture cannot accumulate into the fuel sitting in storage, which is potentially possible, especially if you have temperature swings in your garage. The other school of thought is to store them as empty as possible since the octane levels will drop a little bit. And so when you want to bring it out of storage, first thing you do, you go to the gas station, fuel up the car, and now you have a fresh tank of fuel. Those are the main two thoughts. Now, obviously, I store them with a full tank of fuel. I want to keep the moisture out of the tank as much as possible. Now, the octane levels will definitely have the potential to drop over the wintertime, but these cars, if they're stock factory tuned, they are tuned to 91 octane. And most gas stations, you can get 93 premium. So you already have a little bit of a bump there with the octane levels. Now, obviously, most gas stations in this country are E10, meaning they're 10% ethanol. Here in New Jersey, there are no non-ethanol gas stations. I've had a lot of people tell me, oh, just get non-ethanol gas. Well, you can't get it at the pumps here, and to buy it in individual quarts or 5-gallon jugs is really expensive to do. So I just stick with the pump gas, and putting the fuel stabilizer in there gives you a 1-year window as it is to keep the gas fresh. I use Stable 360. I think that's pretty good stuff. It's not expensive to get. For $10, I can do both cars and have a little bit left over for some of my my small engine equipment. So it's not expensive, really basic, cheap endeavor. I've always been told gasoline goes bad after 3 months. I've always been told that 3 months, this ethanol blended gas. I actually came across a really interesting article on the Sunoco website where they were discussing regular versus premium fuel and the deterioration of the octane levels. And basically what they were saying was regular gas, 87, starts to break down after about 3 months with no fuel stabilizer. However, premium fuel, they said, is good for about 9 months because it's a much more highly refined fuel. So premium gas, even without the fuel stabilizer in it, would probably be good for, they're saying, about plus or minus 9 months window versus 3 months for 87. And since you already have 93 in the tank and the car's tuned to 91, you already have that window there, but then putting the fuel stabilizer in on top of that, I should be good. I really don't think there's going to be any sort of issues with the octane levels dropping below a safe level. I think between me being well above the recommended octane for the car and the fuel stabilizer that stabilizes it as it is, don't think there's going to be a problem. So I just leave them with a full tank of fuel and no condensation or moisture is going to accumulate in there. I've always done this and I've never had a problem. It's also important to remember with these modern Mustangs or any of these Fords with the capless fuel fillers on them, you cannot use a regular funnel to put fuel stabilizer in the car. So when I go to the gas station, there's a little funnel that comes in all these cars. It's kind of hidden in the trunk a little bit. It's on the very front side of the trunk, kind of tucked away, just next to where the spare tire tub is. I use that funnel because it's a special diameter and it goes right in there. I will then pour the fuel stabilizer in before I fuel it. So like I said, it churns it up in there, but it's important to remember to use the little funnel that the cars come with because just a regular funnel is not the correct diameter and it will not unlock and allow the funnel to go in. So the car's stabilized, full tank of fuel, it comes back here to the house and it gets washed very, very thoroughly. I want to get all the contaminants off the car, especially if it's going to be sitting for months, especially some of the more aggressive contaminants that could really deteriorate some of the stuff, like these beautiful carbon fiber wheels. I don't want that brake dust sitting on the wheels for months. It could really start to deteriorate the finish, so the cars get a very, very thorough cleaning on them. And because I'm going to be putting covers on them, you don't want to be pulling a cover across a dirty car with dirt, dust, all kinds of contaminants on it, just going to scratch the paint. So you got to make sure the car is really clean and good to go. Same thing with the ceramic coating. That's usually the final coating. I usually do that about once a year. I'll do this spray on ceramic coating. Use the hybrid solutions. I think it works really well. It's amazing how even just hosing the car off, it takes virtually all the contaminants off, because it does a really good job with that. The inside of the cars get cleaned, primarily vacuumed. They usually stay pretty clean, these cars. I stored them with the windows up in the garage, so they don't get too dirty. They don't need a ton of attention, but just to start off, I want to start off with a nice, beautiful, clean car at the beginning of the season, so they get vacuumed and dusted inside and anything that will need. Like I said, I put extra air in the tires. Rubber is naturally porous. It's going to seep air over time, no matter what. So I'll put extra air in the tires just so, because if I just leave them at the recommended 32, by the time the summer or the spring comes around and I take them out of storage mode after about 4 or 5 months, they'd probably be down to high 20s. So I'll usually put them up to mid to upper 30s, just so they don't fall below the 32 and they're always good to go. And it keeps them nice and round. The battery tenders get hooked up. I run the wires. I can usually run them underneath where the headlight is here on these Mustangs, and it doesn't pinch anything. It's got plenty of slack. I can leave the hoods closed all the way. And then as far as the tender itself, now Deltran, the company that makes the battery tender, says you can leave the battery tenders plugged in 100% of the time, and it's perfectly all right. I don't like doing that because if it does malfunction, you're never going to know, and if it overcharges the battery, it's going to wreck them. So I used to use a mechanical timer like you'd use for holiday lights. I have a smart plug now that I can control from my phone, and I just program a time in to it. I have them come on every day, once a day for an hour, tops the cars off, ready to go. So you got to have these batteries plugged in to some sort of battery maintainer, or they're going to drop so low that you'll probably have to jump start it, and it starts to really deteriorate the life and shorten the life of the batteries if you let them drop really low. These batteries do not like to be fully drained, or it hurts their lifespan significantly. The covers then go on after the tender's all hooked up. I put these clear disposable covers on. These are basically the covers that they use in body shops to keep all the dust and debris off of cars. They're super, super lightweight. These are much lighter than your regular cover's going to be. These are about $10 each. I get them on eBay. I buy them in a 2-pack. They fit okay. They're not perfect. They don't come down all the way, but they're pretty good. It's mainly just to keep the dust off them. Even though this garage is sealed up pretty tight, you'd be surprised how dusty the cars will get just sitting in here over the winter time. So when the winter's over, I take these off. I just throw them out. Rather than getting some expensive cover and have to constantly clean it, I just chuck these, because I don't put the covers on when I'm using the cars during the summertime months, because all it does is put scratches in the cars. If you put a cover on a dirty car, rubs all that dirt in the paint, puts scratches in it. This is the only time I put covers on the cars, and it's a pretty cheap endeavor to get these 2 covers for like 20 bucks for the pair, and then just throw them out. You don't have to worry about them come springtime. And then finally, my insurance. Now, I have USAA for my insurance. I have, under my policy, there is an option for store a car, they call it. Essentially what that means is you can store the car from the perspective of the insurance company, meaning the car is in a secure location, it is not being driven. And by putting them in storage mode, that means that the cars are still covered. If the house burns down, a tree crashes through the garage, something happens, the cars get destroyed, they are insured, they are covered. But they are not covered if you drive them, because when you're storing the car, they assume you're not driving it. By doing that, it drops my insurance premium significantly. I just did it before because I finished doing everything I needed to do to the cars today. I knocked $1,100 off my policy, putting both of these cars in storage till about the end of April. So it's a huge savings being able to put them into storage mode. They're still covered. If something happens to the cars while they're in here, you just can't drive the cars. That's really the main restriction. You can't drive the cars, but because you're not driving them, the odds of something happening are significantly lower, and it lowers your insurance premium a lot. So that's really nice that they do that. That's a huge savings for me. So I'm not driving the cars anyway. It's nice that they offer that, where I can get a significant amount of money back, because the cars are basically just sitting here in the garage. Now, To keep the conditions right in here, I have a dedicated dehumidifier that I use just for here in the garage to make sure the humidity is really good. Nice big, it's like a 50 pint per 24 hour, nice big dehumidifier. It knocks humidity down in here really fast. If it ever gets humid in here, if I have the door open for whatever reason and there's a temperature differential and it gets humid in here, I turn that thing on, boom, takes care of the humidity immediately. So I have humidity monitors in here so I can keep an eye on things, make sure it's not getting too moist in here so moisture doesn't build up in the cars at all. If you don't have a dehumidifier for your garage, you can get disposable dehumidifier tubs that they sell at home improvement stores. You can get big ones that'll do the whole garage. You can also get smaller individual ones. You can put them in the cars themselves to keep humidity from building up inside the cars. Another thing a lot of people forget, controlling bugs and rodents. It's getting cold here in New Jersey. Everything's trying to come into the garage because it's warmer in here. So I put sticky traps all over the garage. I got mouse traps everywhere. Modern cars have soy-based wiring harnesses, and mice love to chew on those things because they taste good, apparently. So you don't want to find out that a mouse or something was chewing on those wiring harnesses because it's become a very complicated and expensive endeavor if that happens. So be preventative about that. Get lots of sticky traps that everything's trying to come in, all the little small bugs and rodents. Take care of them before they potentially wreck your car. So it's only a few dollars. Sticky traps and mouse traps are not expensive. I have them deployed all over the place in here. So I'm protected should those guys try to sneak in here. And finally, considerations for some people that I personally do not do. Another popular thing I hear a lot of people, idling the car in the garage. You know, basically come out here once a week, start the car, let it idle for 10, 15, 20 minutes, whatever you want to do. I don't do that. I think it's totally pointless to do that because your car's just sitting here, potentially in a cold environment, and just idling it doesn't really get it up to full temperature. It might get the coolant up to full temperature, but the oil is not probably going to get the full temperature. You'd have to idle that thing for a long time just sitting there, not moving under load to get the oil to full temperature. And I think all you're doing is introducing moisture to the crankcase. So I don't ever do that. This is how they're gonna sit till probably end of April, beginning of May, whenever I take them back out of storage mode. I don't do that start, idling, just leave it. You put moisture into the cars, into the crankcases, so just leave them, don't do it. Flat spot preventers, you can do it. It's not gonna hurt if you do it. A lot of people like to do flat spot preventers, put them under the tires so you don't get flat spots on the tires. I don't think it's really necessary on modern radial tires to do that. I don't think flat spots are problems like they were on older tires years ago, like bias ply tires or some of the older tires where it was really a main issue. That's also the reason I put extra air in the tires too. I've never used flat spot preventers. I've always put extra air in the tires. I've never, ever had a problem. I've heard some people say the tires will feel a little weird, and then after a couple of miles, it'll drive out any sort of imperfections that happen in the tires. I've never had it happen to me. Maybe they're right, I can't confirm that, but I've never, ever had an issue. So I think modern tires, especially only storing the car for 4 or 5 months, I don't think you're really gonna get any flat spots. Make sure you have sufficient air in the tires, and I think you're gonna be fine with something like that. And then finally, getting the car off the ground, putting it on blocks, jack stands, that kind of thing. I think that's the kind of thing if you're going to be storing the car for years, maybe you're in the military, maybe you're moving somewhere and the car's gonna be sitting potentially for years. I think that's when you get into the more extreme things. That's when you get into drain the fuel tanks, putting the cars up on blocks. But if you're just gonna be storing the cars like I do for a few months, I don't think you have to put them on jack stands. I don't think you have to get the suspension off the ground. Again, I've never done it. Any of the other cars I had, my Viper, my Cobra R, I never did it for any of those cars, and I never had any issues just letting them sit basically in the same conditions I have the Shelbys right now. So for your seasonal storage, people like me, I think this is pretty much all you're gonna need. I would just basically go through the stuff that I kind of said of how I set them up, and it's always worked very well for me. So I hope you enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching.